Akwaba, welcome to this week's edition of Ghana in Focus. Myself, Kwame, Ghanaian writer, broadcaster, journalist, podcaster, and entrepreneur. And in this week's edition of Ghana in Focus, we're looking forward to the budget. It's a budget special. So we'll be telling you our hopes and our aspirations for the budget and why this budget is going to be a very, very important budget for you if you are wanting to do anything in Ghana. That's the theme for this week's podcast, budget special, hopes and aspirations for the budget. So before we get into the podcast, if you like what you hear, please share to your friends, family, social media networks. Subscribe to Ghana Africa in Focus on YouTube. The aim for this is to try and get between 100 and 200 subscribers. So please subscribe to Ghana Africa in Focus on YouTube. Hit the notification bell, meaning that every time I upload a podcast, YouTube will notify you. Also, we're on Spotify. Look out for Ghana Africa in Focus on Spotify podcast. Click on the follow button, and that will ensure that every time I upload a new podcast, Spotify will alert you. Okay, and we want to get 1,000 subscribers this year on Spotify. So far, we're 575. So thank you for those who have followed me on Spotify. So tell your friends, family about this great podcast called Ghana Africa in Focus, and subscribe on either YouTube or Spotify. Okay, so let's get into the podcast, looking about the budget and our hopes and aspirations for this important budget. So on March 11th, for Tuesday, the new NDC Mahama Part 2, 2.0, will be presenting its first budget on that day. Now, this is a very, very important budget. It possibly is the most important budget in Ghana's recent history. And I make no exaggeration when I say that, because this budget is under the backdrop of a severe cost of living crisis in Ghana, severe inflation, particularly food inflation. Food inflation is huge in Ghana. Yes, if you come to Ghana on holiday, your pounds or whatever, right, your dollars, euros, that even is not going to work, because basically food inflation in Ghana is huge. Yeah, it's massive. And also it's under the backdrop of also the domestic debt exchange program, which all the Ghanaians are going through right now. Also, the external debt program, of which Ghana has just concluded talks with its external partners to pay back some of the huge external debt that Ghana owes. And added to that, you've also got the depreciation of the cedi, which is still quite high, despite a new government. They've only been in government for 6 weeks. And also backdrop against, high interest rates. Yeah. So this is the backdrop of the budget that will be taking place on Tuesday. So like I said, it's possibly the most important budget, yeah, for at least 20 years. At least 20 years. So it also affects you. So if you're obviously living in Ghana right now, the budget is going to affect you, definitely. If you're wanting to come to Ghana even a holiday, yeah, because the pound's in your pocket, the euro in your pocket, the US dollars in your pocket when you change it, yeah, that's going to have some bearing on you getting a hotel, the cost of transportation, food, etc. So it's important to you. If you are wanting to start a business in Ghana, the budget is important to you. If you are wanting to settle in Ghana, particularly, especially buy property, buy land, the budget is important to you. So no one can escape the reality of the budget, yeah, because the budget is going to affect each and every one of you listeners, whether you're in Ghana or not in Ghana, because, like I said, that this year's budget backdrop is very, very, unprecedented and very, very precarious. And so what we're going to do, in this podcast is to look at things that we think should be in the budget, yeah, and things that government should do to try and stimulate growth within the economy, because this budget for me is going to be very, very important, given the backdrop that I've mentioned on the outset, but also because this budget will determine which direction Dramani Mahama and the NDC are going to take Ghana, particularly in the next 4 years. It could also shape Ghana for the next 10 or so years, yeah? And so we're going to give our perspective as to what we feel should be in the budget, what should not be in the budget, and how the budget could affect Ghana in the short, medium, long term. And so for me, the first thing that we want to see in the budget is the removal of some taxes, which are the e-levy tax, the betting tax, the emissions tax, and also the COVID-19 tax. Because for me, these taxes are a burden on the Ghanaian. It's also a burden on business, and it's also hampering growth, and also, the business sector particularly, because these taxes were among 22 taxes that the last NPP government introduced within its, particularly the last 4 or 5 years. Yeah. And these taxes is why things are so expensive in Ghana, is why food is so expensive in Ghana, is why there's a cost of living crisis in Ghana. So if the finance minister, Acheampong, if he's able to remove 4 of those taxes, because there's quite a few taxes, there's about, like I said, the last NPP government introduced 22 new taxes. Yeah. And so if Acheampong is able to remove the key ones, which for me are the COVID levy tax, which was initiated during the COVID time. Now that COVID is gone, I don't even need to pay this, outrageous levy. Another levy that needs to go is the betting tax. Yeah, because a lot of young Ghanaian men are putting a lot of money within their gambling fraternity. Yeah. And even if they win, yeah, the returns aren't that much because of the taxes, the betting tax that has been imposed by the last government. And so if the new NDC government budget can remove the betting tax, that would be a good thing. Another tax that should be removed is this emissions tax. Again, another tax that was introduced by the last NPP government in a bid to this thing about climate change. For me, climate change is a hoax. I believe, well, I knew this even before Donald Trump, but Trump is of the opinion that this climate change thing is a hoax. It's a false narrative. And I agree with that because, in example in Ghana, it's not climate change that is causing flooding in Ghana. It is not climate change that is taking away, that is polluting our land. It's not climate change that is destroying the water bodies. It is not climate change that is part of deforestation in Ghana. All of these things, right, that I've mentioned have got nothing at all to do with climate change. The reason why there's something in Ghana is because people are building on waterways. So the waterways, which, water, your bath water, your toilet water, the wastewater has to go through, right? If people are building on those pipes where the waste has to go through, right, that means you're blockaging those water bodies access to the rivers, yeah, and to the ocean. And so when you block it, yeah, you block that pathway, it's obviously going to cause issue. So that's why when it rains heavily and the water's not allowed to, water can't flow because the water has been blocked because the people have been building on it. That will cause, you know, that will cause flooding in flood-prone areas, that are low-level areas as well. So why live in Tema? Because Kwame Nkrumah built a lot of drainage systems in Tama. When it rains, it doesn't flood in Tama. Yeah. Even if some of the gutters are choked. Yeah. But because there's an effective drainage working system in Tama, when it rains, it doesn't flood. Yeah. And so climate change does not cause flooding. Now, two, the pollution of our land and the water body. This has got nothing at all to do with climate change. It's about illegal small-scale mining, I'm saying. That is, using the damaging chemicals like cyanide, like mercury, like lead. Yeah, these chemicals is what is destroying the water body and causing land erosion, not climate change. And finally, the deforestation in Ghana, nothing at all to do with climate change, but there's a lot of illegal logging in Ghana, right? And even the cocoa farms have been destroyed by these Ghanaians because they want to mine gold. And also these deforestation has occurred because these greedy people want to take our prime wood, yeah, mahogany, yeah, because Ghana's wood is is of prime quality, yeah, that is used to make top-notch furniture. So this cutting of our trees, yeah, causes deforestation that changes, the climate. So, I don't believe in climate change. These all I've mentioned is man-made, yeah. And so, the emissions tax needs to be removed. So if this government in its budget that is going to be read out by the finance minister, Acheampong, if they can remove the COVID levy tax, the betting tax, the emissions tax, and also the e-levy tax, yeah, that would be a very, very good thing because that will stimulate growth. But before I come to that, some people have said that, these are very, very key taxes that contribute, in excess of 50 billion Ghana cedis, to the coffers. Where are we going to get that from? Simple answer. Like I said, on many occasions, right? Public sector corruption in Ghana is huge. The Auditor General does his report every year, talking about the corruption in the public service. And in every year since 2018, $2.5 billion US has been lost due to corrupt activities by public sector officials. Yeah. So 2.5 billion, right? Times that by 15 to $1. How much is that? Yeah. That's more than 30 billion Ghana cedis that Ghana could be saving if it negated corruption in the public sector. Yeah. Also, like I mentioned before, Ghana loses on average, yeah, 5 billion US a year because of gold smuggling out of the country. So 5 billion times it by 15 to $1. Yeah. That's 75 billion Ghana cedis that Ghana could be saving if Ghana was able to stop this unwholesome practice of gold smuggling. So if you have 75 billion, right, to 30 billion in terms of the public sector corruption, that's over 100 billion Ghana cedis. Yeah. Juxtapose that to 50 billion that Ghana will lose because of scrapping e-levy, COVID levy, emissions levy, and also the betting tax. Yeah. So government can scrap those taxes that I've mentioned because if it's able to negate the corruption within the public sector and also stop gold smuggling going out of Ghana, Ghana will save a lot of money that it can even invest in other areas of the economy, such as infrastructure development and what have you. And so, for me, these taxes need to go. So we very much hope that these four taxes I've mentioned will go come the budget on Tuesday. Again, but before I get into that point, I talked about how these taxes, if they're removed, it will stimulate growth. Let me just elaborate on that point, because these taxes, yeah, if they are removed, yeah, that will stimulate growth because people will have, more money, yeah. So rather than this money being lost in taxation, this money will be spent by the public. They'll spend more money because they don't be taxed, yeah. So this will, so in terms of the betting tax, that will encourage more people to spend more money because they know that it won't be taxed, and that money will go to the government coffers. Also, if these taxes are removed, when businesses come to Ghana and do business right, they won't put that extra cost on the on the consumer. So again, it will make prices stabilize in Ghana by removing the nuisance taxes, because companies will not pass on those taxes onto the consumer. Yeah. So that we've seen in the last couple of years, and I've reported to you, many big brands have left Ghana because of this high taxes that businesses have to deal with. And so if some of these taxes are removed, it will stimulate growth within the business sector, because businesses will be in a stronger position because not paying they're paying less taxes. That could stimulate growth in the economy. Also, it will encourage consumer spending, because again, if you remove the new taxes, yeah, a lot of companies will not put these taxes on the consumer. So that will in effect make prices cheaper in Ghana, which will encourage consumers to spend more on consumer goods. Yeah, which will definitely, kickstart the economy or reset the economy in terms of that aspect. And lastly, by businesses not having to pay, more taxes, they could use some of that money that they will save on taxes to invest in their companies, pay better wages for their staff, and more importantly, use that extra money to generate growth within their own businesses to try and, create more job opportunities and what have you. And so for me, it is essential that these taxes are removed, because, businesses will benefit, and that will help it also, in terms of what the goal of the NDC is, to reset the economy, because these taxes will help business reset the economy by having more money in their pockets. Again, we want to see, the government invest in agriculture. So, there's two ways that this can be done, or three ways which this can be done. So I mentioned in the podcast, the great Acheampong, Kutu Acheampong, had a policy of pay feed yourself, where he encouraged every Ghanaian to get a parcel of land and grow food on it. Yeah. Again, this will encourage Ghanaians to grow what they eat and eat what they grow. Yeah. So this will encourage many Ghanaians who got little parts of land to grow food on it. Yeah. Again, another way in which government can invest in agriculture is by either interest-free loans to farmers or soft loans, whereby the farmers don't pay exorbitant rates. Now, doing these two things, let alone revisiting Operation Feed Yourself, but just doing these two things will stimulate growth within the agriculture sector, because if farmers get interest-free loans or soft loans at very, very low rates, that will encourage the farmers to produce more food. And if they produce more food, that would take the massive burden off food inflation, because like I said, right now, food in Ghana is very, very expensive, and everyone eats in Ghana. So if you're a tourist, you come to Ghana on a holiday, you wanted to do business in Ghana for, you're in Ghana for a few weeks, you're going to buy food. So food inflation is very, very high in Ghana. And so if the government on the budget on Tuesday if they can, you know, put money aside to even subsidize the farmers or encourage every Ghanaian to get parts of land and grow food, as well as, you know, providing farmers with interest-free loans or soft loans, that's going to stimulate growth within the agriculture sector. And that will hopefully, you know, lead to cheaper food prices that will again stimulate growth, because if food is cheaper in Ghana, right, people will be encouraged to buy more food. Because like I said, right now, you know, families are struggling, right, to afford 3 square meals a day because of the high inflation on food. And so if the government within the budget invests or has a part where it can, you know, ensure that food is cheaper in Ghana than what it is right now, that's going to stimulate the economy, because people will be inclined to buy more food, yeah, and this will also help our local farmers as well. So the second thing that we want to see in the budget on Tuesday, in terms of developing, a policy that can actually, you know, bring down the rate of food inflation in Ghana. So the first thing that we want to see is that the government, you know, makes it conducive for businesses to grow. And what we mean by that is by making interest rates low, because right now, interest rates in Ghana are very, very high. And this has caused many businesses to close over the last 3 to 5 years, either close, particularly local Ghanaian businesses, or in terms of the big boys, many of the big boys have relocated to other parts of West Africa, whereby interest rates are much, much lower. And so what we want to see in this budget is a mechanism whereby the Ministry of Finance can actually enforce a policy that will allow the Bank of Ghana to cut its base rate, because right now the base rate in Ghana is still hovering about 27, 26%. Very, very high. In actual fact, Ghana has the highest base rate of any country in the West African sub-region. Yeah, even the so-called war-torn or coup makers in Guinea-Bissau, Mali, Burkina Faso, and Niger, they've got low interest rates. And so, in order to stimulate growth within the business sector and within the wider economy, there must be a mechanism that brings interest rates down, because that will stimulate growth in the economy, and that will also allow businesses to invest, because if interest rates are cheaper, you know, then that would encourage businesses to take out loans and to invest more in their business development and capacity. Yeah, so that's another thing that we want to see in the budget on Tuesday, whereby, you know, government can put mechanisms in place to lower the rate of interest. Now, on that, you know, it's also vital that, you know, if Ghana wants to attract businesses, particularly in the wake of the African Continental Free Trade Area and also the West Africa sub-region, that Ghana has to lower its interest rates, because, like I said, right now, interest rates in Ghana, cost of doing business is very, very high. Again, we want to see a mechanism in the budget whereby Ghanaian businesses are, in essence, subsidized, because right now, like I mentioned before, the key sectors of Ghana's economy is not Ghanaian owned. They're owned by non-Ghanaians, i.e. Lebanese, Indians, Chinese, and in the mining and oil sector, it's Europeans. And so for the government to, you know, encourage a golden age of Ghanaian businesses, yeah, it has to formulate policies and strategies, right, that will enable local Ghanaian businesses to thrive. And this is why I'm saying that within the budget, there must be a mechanism in place that encourages A, Ghanaian businesses in the first place, that B, supports Ghanaian businesses in terms of their capacity development and building, and also more importantly, C, financially, it should, again, offer local Ghanaian businesses, indigenous Ghanaian businesses, yeah, either soft loans, yeah, or tax breaks for 5 years until they start making profits, or interest-free loans, because the engine of any country's economy is its small, medium enterprise, small, medium enterprises. Yeah, this is a micro economy. Yeah, and so if the indigenous Ghanaian businesses are allowed to thrive, yeah, like what other countries do, then that's the win-win situation for Ghana. Why? Because A, these local Ghanaian businesses, indigenous Ghanaian businesses, were making profits. These profits are not going out of the country, they're staying in the country. That will stimulate growth. And B, that will also help these businesses employ more people, that will create wealth opportunities in Ghana. So this is why it's a must that the budget on Tuesday has a component that you could say that encourages indigenous Ghanaian businesses and supports the development, the growth and trajectory of indigenous Ghanaian businesses. That for me is a must, because without that, then we're not going to get the Ghanaian entrepreneurs of the future, and we're not going to get the Ghanaian businesses that we need in order to compete with the non-Ghanaian businesses who are dominating the key sectors of Ghana's economy. So it's very, very important that local businesses are supported and developed. And finally, one of the things that we want to see in the budget is this issue about the domestic debt exchange program. Like I said before, because of the mismanagement and reckless borrowing of the last NPP government, yeah, that caused overborrowing and overspending. That, in essence, is the backdrop and the cause of the domestic exchange program that Ghanaians are going to suffer in the short, medium, and long term. Like I said, this domestic debt crisis, or domestic debt program, could last another 5 years up until 2030. So what I want to see in the budget is that mechanisms must be put in place that will allow the interest on the domestic debt exchange program to be as such that Ghanaian investors do not suffer massively, because right now, as we all know, pensions have suffered, because of the domestic debt program. Investors, local investors who bought government bonds have been affected of the domestic debt exchange program. They've had, the haircut as it was put. Yeah. And so that has led to, people not investing in the local economy, i.e., government bonds and other financial instruments. And that has created a vacuum within the financial sector in Ghana, because right now, the financial sector in Ghana is struggling. The banks are, probably breaking even, if that. And so, and a lot of that has to do with the effects and after effects of the domestic debt exchange program, yeah, which saw, billions wiped off of the bonds, government bonds, and also pensions, just to have some equilibrium as to the money that government has borrowed. And so in the budget on Tuesday, we want to see how the burden of the Ghanaian taxpayer can be eased whereby government is not going to prolong the domestic debt exchange program and put in facility whereby, the interest rate that Ghanaians are getting for the bonds can be at least be doubled, so that the effect of the domestic exchange program is not as stark to local investors as it is right now, whereby many investors have lost a lot of their money because of the domestic debt exchange program. And apart from this, we want to see investment in education and healthcare in particular, because and this is more pertinent because of the USAID not or removing its aid from Ghana as an order from Trump. And we know that as I mentioned in one podcast, why Ghana does not need USAID, that Ghana gets $150 million from USAID. A good 3/4 of that money goes into just health and education. And so on Tuesday, we want to see the finance minister make proposals to invest more in our system of education and also our healthcare, because right now our healthcare, as I mentioned before, leaves a lot to be desired. And so it's important that government invests in healthcare, invest in education to provide local solutions for local problems. We don't need the USAID, we don't need donor support. We can do this on our own. And like I said, the money is in Ghana. You got to look at the corners, particularly in the mining sector and the oil and gas sector. Yeah, the mining sector, we're not getting enough royalties. So again, I want the finance minister to say that he's going to demand more royalties from these mining companies that are basically, looting Ghana. Because right now, Ghana gets 2%. Gold is at record prices. Gold is nearly $3,000 an ounce. 3,000 US dollars an ounce. Yeah. And Ghana only gets 2% of that income. Last year, 5 million ounces of gold were mined in Ghana. That's legally. I'm not talking about the legal stuff. That's legally. So you times 5 million ounces, you times that by, let's average it out, $2,900 an ounce. You do the maths. Ghana only got 2% of that. Yeah, that can't be right. So in this budget, I would love the finance minister to say that we want 10%. That's a start. 10% baseline of royalty. That will bring in billions upon billions of US dollars and cities to the coffers if Ghana can demand more revenue from its gold production output. Also, oil. Again, the finance minister needs to be bold, like Ibrahim Traore of Burkina Faso, like leaders of Niger and Mali, be bold and say that we want more for oil. Yeah. So right now, Ghana's getting about 10 to 50% revenue from oil production. That's nothing, beloved. So at least Ghana should be getting at least, if you speak to oil experts within the industry, Ghana should be getting at least 25% of all revenue, of all royalties from oil production. So again, if the finance minister is bold and says that we're going to ask the oil companies to give us at least 20% of all the revenue, that's a lot of revenue coming into Ghana coffers that can be used to build schools, roads, hospitals, factories, complete the unfinished Agenda 111 hospitals that the last government didn't build, complete the schools that the last government didn't build, etc. Because we need this money, particularly from the mining and oil sectors, because these are key sectors that are bringing a lot of revenue, particularly gold, where, like I said, gold is at the all-time high on the world market, but we're not seeing any benefit right now. So the finance minister should be bold and demand more revenue, more royalties from gold production and oil production. And so for me, if the finance minister does all that I've just mentioned here, you still see a big reset within the economy of Ghana, and you will see the Ghana economy grow grow exponentially, that will also enable the citizens to enjoy, the wealth of the oil, of the gold receipt that Ghana gets, potentially could be getting from substantial increase in receipts that come into the government coffers. And that will manifest itself, like I said, in first-class schools, first-class public hospitals, first-class roads, first-class infrastructure, etc. That would also help within the economic development and trajectory of the country. And so this is my aspirations for budget 2025. And we hope that the finance minister and other government officials are listening to this podcast and will take in consideration some of the things that we've outlined today of what we would like to see in Tuesday's budget that we believe will stimulate growth within the economy and also reset the economy from the last 4 to 5 years of economic mismanagement and overspending and overborrowing. Because if this budget is done very, very well, Ghana will never need to go to IMF or World Bank again, because we these mechanisms that we put in place will set Ghana, particularly if you get a lot of revenue from gold and oil, will set Ghana on the correct trajectory and on a path towards Ghana beyond aid. Remember that? Ghana beyond aid? Right. So this is why this budget is a very, very, very important budget that will, chart the future course and direction of the country, particularly over the next 4 years. And so I thank you for listening to this special edition of Ghana in Focus with myself, Kwame, Ghanaian writer, broadcaster, journalist, podcaster, and entrepreneur. If you like what you hear, please share it to your friends, family, social media networks. Please subscribe to Ghana Africa in Focus on YouTube. Subscribe to Ghana Africa in Focus on Spotify. And also, if you'd like to donate to the show to help us continue to bring some fantastic content for you from Ghana, from Africa, you can donate as little as $3 a month, and just go onto the donate page. That's in the footnotes to this show. All right, so for the next few weeks, we're going to look at business opportunities in Ghana. As it's Ghana month, we'll be looking at some of the business opportunities, numerous business opportunities, I may add, that you can tap into, particularly if you're coming to Ghana to start new businesses. So we're doing that for the next 3 weeks throughout March. So for myself, Kwame, and from the crew here on Ghana in Focus, is thank you very much for listening, and we'll see you next week for some more exciting content coming out of Ghana.